All right, YouTube. Some months ago, I remember sparring with Republicans, keeping in mind I'm not one of them. I'm not on the Trump train. I told them that the polls showing Clinton and Sanders, respectively, depending on the state, really, it swung wildly. You'd have Clinton up by 15 in one state and ahead by like 2 in another, and vice versa for Sanders. They showed Clinton and Sanders handily beating both Trump and Cruz, with Kasich being the only one really who actually somehow had an edge, and people were mystified by this. And Kasich used it as a campaign line. I'm the only one that can beat, Hillary. I'm the only one that can win the election, which was never true. And I mentioned to people, this was about a month ago, I said the reason why Kasich is rated higher in the polls is because he is out of the line of fire. Nobody's really attacking him. Nobody really thinks anything about him, I said. At the time, Kasich was a stand-in. His numbers versus Hillary or Sanders were a stand-in for insert Republican here. That is, any generic Republican about which you know nothing, have no strong opinions towards positively or negatively, versus Hillary and Sanders. And that generic candidate, for which Kasich was essentially the figurehead, wins handily. Which is why I said once the Republican Party does unify, which it was always going to do, behind Trump, once he becomes not just presumptive nominee, not just guaranteed to be nominee, but is actually physically post-convention the nominee, that his numbers will look a hell of a lot better against the presumptive Democratic nominee, which is, of course, Hillary Clinton. It doesn't even matter, by the way, if Sanders becomes the nominee. The Democrats are stuck between a cock and a hard place, with Trump playing hardball with them. They have to choose, do they appease Debbie Wasserman Schultz, most of the heads of the DNC, the superdelegates, and their party's donation structure, nominate Hillary and lose most of the under 25 Democrats, in which case a lot of them will vote for Trump because he's arguably more progressive on certain issues, or they'll stay home, or they'll vote Libertarian or Green Party or something. Or do they nominate Sanders and see all the over 50 Democrats abandon them? It is a no-win situation for the Democrats. This is why I told people many months ago, if it comes down, and I expected that it would, I predicted this like half a year ago, if it comes down to Trump versus Clinton, Trump will clean her clock. Nobody wanted to believe it, though, because they were paying attention to the polls, but I told you, Trump at the time was singularly focused on attacking Cruz for the most part. He wasn't attacking Hillary Clinton for the most part. Hillary was attacking him occasionally, giving him a couple shots across the bow. The Democrats start with a systemic advantage because their presumptive nominee is focused primarily on issues, whereas Trump was primarily focused on beating his opponents down, which worked. He's the presumptive nominee. I say guaranteed nominee. Now that Trump no longer has to do that, the field has narrowed to one person. Now that he can focus just on the Democrats, magically the polls show them at a 50-50 split. By the way, terrible news for Hillary Clinton, who will almost certainly be the Democratic nominee. It's terrible news that she doesn't have a systemic advantage, and it's not even the general election yet. The primary season's not even over yet. Trump has already dominated his own party and gone on to even the odds to about 50-50 with Hillary Clinton, with polls showing him up now in Ohio, which is an important swing state that Mitt Romney barely got, and which John McCain lost to Barack Obama. It's not the barometer of the election is not looking like it's in Hillary's favor anymore to some people. The media will drag it out as they did with the primaries, say Clinton can still do it. Clinton's not really at a disadvantage. Here's 10,000 fucking reasons why. And I will sit back and laugh and tell you, I predict the next president will be Donald Trump. I don't have to vote for him. I don't have to like half of his ideas on policy. But he has an extreme advantage. The business Democrats, that is the now late 40s to early 60s Democrats, heavily unionized, mostly white, are overwhelmingly jumping ship to Donald Trump. That alone is a disaster for the Democrats if they want to be competitive in Ohio. They're not going to get Ohio, most likely. Indiana, they've got no shot at Indiana. Michigan could be in play. It could become a swing state. Wisconsin, same deal. Pennsylvania, same deal. In the last few elections, Pennsylvania was looking more like it at least leaned towards the blue side. It leaned towards the Democrats. Not so, says Donald Trump, as he quickly turns the state into a battleground. The Democrats do not have the machine necessary. They do not have a number of talented people, recognizable names necessary to compete in that many states. They can if there are 5 or 6 important swing states, the Democrats can dominate because they can use their focus groups. The Hillary Clinton camp can use that, and use all sorts of proxies to go out and campaign and so forth. When it comes down to a dozen different swing states, they don't understand quite what's going on. They're confused right now. This is another prediction. The Democratic Party is confused as to why Trump won nomination, which he has, and why he is now utterly even with Hillary Clinton. Polls will begin to show in the next weeks, I believe, as the party continues to unify in the wake of West Virginia and Nebraska. Trump up in many of these swing states. Don't expect it within the next month. Don't expect him to suddenly start winning New York in polls or winning in New Mexico or edging out Clinton in California. You're not going to see that for some time, and depending on the metrics of the race, what's said, how many mistakes are made, and by whom, you may never see that. Another thing that is important, my prediction of a Trump landslide is based on the fact that I don't know who the VP nominees will be. And I don't know whether the major issues of the primary season will carry over to the general election. If the VPs are even, all things considered, that is, neither of them moves the race substantially, or both of them do, or both of them are a net negative, if we consider that even, and we say that roughly the same issues will be in play at the same level of importance to their various partisan voters and independents within the general election, as has been the case in the campaigns for the primaries, then I would predict Trump will be up 5 to 10 points by voting time. He will win the election. The Democrats will then feign confusion and say, how could we possibly lose? This was a Nazi sexist bigot, and you'll see them. The Solons and Jezebels of the world, should that happen, will not take the hint. They will immediately regress to name-calling, and they will say, how could we have, it must be the last gasp of white male supremacy in the United States, all these horrible closeted racists. But what they don't understand is one of the main reasons why Donald Trump has already won the primary season and is now neck and neck with somebody who has a multi-billion-dollar fundraising machine, while his own party supposedly is in disarray. Once that solves itself, he's going to shoot up in the polls again. The reason he did so well and is doing so well and is likely to continue doing so well is that a large segment of the U.S. population, not just whites, not just males, but Americans in general, feel alienated by the policies of people like Hillary, Obama, and those like them. They also feel alienated, by the way, I'm not going to excuse the GOP's establishment here. They felt alienated by Bush, and that helped bring about the Obama era. The thing is, the difference is that the paradigm shift is as follows. Trump doesn't pull any punches when describing George W. Bush as a fucking utter moron. Says the war was a bad idea. Bush was a disaster for the economy. And he's right, and people are going to give him credit for that. The thing is, here's the other thing. Here's the other reason I think that Trump has an advantage. Hillary Clinton and the establishment DNC, the Mondales of the world, and all of the others like them, they have consistently run their campaigns on ideological wedge issues, pitting one group of Americans against another. Black versus white, rich versus poor. You support gun rights, you're against gun rights. Whatever it happens to be. What's Trump basing his on? America versus the world. Which one is the more expansive group as far as American voting goes? All U.S. citizens, or 51% of U.S. citizens that you've targeted with focus groups to win an election? The former, quite clearly. When people begin to absorb Trump's message of unity, which he's going to carry over to the independents in the country, most of them are going to jump to him. I hate to say it, but Hillary has been utterly and completely outflanked. She's still making mistakes like going into the West Virginia primary, having just gotten done talking about coal miners going out of business under her administration. She doesn't even have an idea what she's doing. Even her focus groups and advisors and so forth aren't enough to save her. She is inept. She is no longer 2008 era Hillary Clinton that knew kind of how to run a campaign, still got beaten out by a black man of all things, which the Democratic Party remains the party of state-level Southern racism, by the way. There are still, like, KKK Southern Democrats down there. Hillary Clinton couldn't beat Obama. Obama is paltry and weak. He is largely disliked. I don't care what the polling says because the polling is quite clearly wrong. People are judging Obama based on his variance with the Republican candidates, and that's why it's above 50% supposedly. This happened under Bush, by the way, during his re-election bid. Bush suddenly looked reasonable compared to some of the people squabbling over how best to undo his own policies. That's why he won re-election. Kerry was boring. Hillary Clinton's even more boring. The other problem is the woman card is going to fail because people in the Democratic Party, and this applies to probably 5 to 10 million people or so, Democrats in suburban and urban regions who feel discredited by Barack Obama's policies because they're paying more. Hillary Clinton is seen as essentially a proxy of Barack Obama. She will continue his fiscal policies, she'll continue his health care mandate, she'll continue everything bad about his administration. But they will be left scratching their heads trying to figure out what he did right. They'll look at the Middle East, they'll say his foreign policy quite clearly didn't make sense. They'll look at the economy, they'll say, well, it's kind of staggering along, but then there's this Trump dude who made billions of dollars. And they'll compare that to Hillary, who said that she left the White House broke, and they'll say, who's better at fiscal planning? They will jump ship to Trump. I think there's a very good chance that he wins, and a fairly good chance he absolutely annihilates the Democrats. Whether this carries over into the Senate or the House is a totally different thing. That's somewhat insulated from the presidential race. You could see a clean sweep in either direction. You could see the Democrats retake the House and the Senate. You could see the Republicans gain more ground. You could see sort of a mix of the two, or stagnation. Things remain more or less the same. It's sort of a stalemate. Ultimately, that doesn't matter either. Trump is at an advantage over Hillary. He has more attention. He now has more notoriety, despite her being a former First Lady and Secretary of State. And she's a one-trick pony. She's honestly a one-trick pony who has alienated a good proportion of her own party, who is alienating younger voters. She's alienating business Democrats. She's alienating pacifist, non-interventionist sort of Democrats, you know, the activists and so forth. She's alienated them all. She's alienated the working class. She's alienated the lower class. Who hasn't she alienated so far? Black voters and middle-class, clueless urbanite suburbans who don't really care. They'll just vote for whoever has a D after their name. That's her voting bloc right now. No wonder she's having difficulty putting the race away against someone who's a 70-something avowed socialist. In West Virginia, a socialist won the Democratic primary in West Virginia. Let this sink in good and hard and ask yourself how powerful a candidate Hillary really is. People who claimed months ago, Hillary's got it in the bag, the Republicans will never beat her because the New World Order or some shit wants her. Bullshit. She's not going to win. Almost certainly. There's a chance she can. She would have to completely transform her message, and or Trump would have to make terrible mistake after terrible fucking mistake over and over during the general election. He'd have to bomb at the first debate. He'd have to bomb at the second debate. He'd have to practically threaten to kill himself out of misery at the third debate in order to lose against Hillary Clinton. It would be difficult. It's his race to lose at this point. We are not in the general yet, and yet the polls are already about even, with him leading in a few of these swing states. That's the worst possible news that could possibly come up for Hillary Clinton. It's terrible. Obama didn't have that disadvantage. Obama lacked experience. Hillary Clinton is seen as having almost too much. In an election season, we're having a lot of experience. is a net negative. We saw what happened to the field within the GOP. The Democrats haven't ignored this fact. The no more Bushes, no more Clintons line was not simply a bunch of Republicans that happened to say, well, we're tired of the Bush era, and by the way, we don't want to vote for the Clintons either. This was a mantra that was taken up by all people within this country. Now, Jeb lost. There will be no Bush nominee for the Republican Party. Good. But unfortunately, the Democratic Party system is so overwhelmingly corrupt, their nominee is likely to be a Clinton. And because of her last name, because of her general lack of trustworthiness, and because her opponent, even in the face of a completely disunified party, is about even with her, even after supposedly being a racist, Nazi, sexist pig, a homophobe, everything wrong with the world, no experience, a blowhard, sub-Neanderthal IQ, leading a disunified party that tried to destroy him because he was so terrible, and he's about even with your candidate. What does that say about Hillary? What does that say about her popularity among the DNC's electorate? The DNC itself can go fuck itself. They want Hillary in there to make money. They probably don't even care if she wins. They just want to get their paydays. Yes, I think Hillary's going to have a lot of problems. All you have to do is look at the sort of extraordinarily negative rhetoric aimed at Trump every time he speaks. The overwhelmingly fawning rhetoric aimed at Hillary. Judge for yourself if they're about even, and one of them is so heavily favored everywhere possible, then is that person really at an advantage? No, that person's inept and a screwball and probably going to lose. That's about all. Peace out.